Great. So I always feel a little bit bad that I start these presentations with talking about crises, as we've probably all had a little bit enough of global crises. But it's really important to acknowledge that, unfortunately, COVID is the dominant crisis that dominates our news, our lives, our businesses, and things like that at the moment. But there are a number of kind of separate yet kind of related global crises happening at the moment, and many of them in a way based on our failure to live sustainably and recognize the limits of unchecked growth. And tourism is a contributor to many of these crises, but also noteworthy stands to suffer many of their consequences. So all in all, it's really important that more now than ever that tourism really kind of takes action to demonstrate how we can be part of the solution on a number of fronts. And it's really that taking that responsible action to reduce our negative impacts and increase the positive impacts will be really an investment in Scottish tourism's future of remaining and being that world-class year-round destination and having that ability to grow the economy sustainably and inclusively. So really what that responsible tourism piece very much underpins the Outlook 2030 strategy. And I think it's probably, quite leading that the overall tourism strategy with a tagline of responsible tourism for a sustainable future clearly puts responsibility and sustainability at its very heart. And even in the tourism recovery plan, which is kind of the recovery update for the next few years of the outlook of the strategy, has net zero and other key elements very much core of that. And some of the other things around there is really just to show that there's a wide range of government policies, legislation, plans that really speak to this kind of thematic, which we are also looking to support. So probably worth just establishing what are we talking about when we talk about responsible tourism, and also kind of just to clarify why responsible, not sustainable, what's the difference. At Visit Scotland in recent years, we've really moved towards talking about responsible tourism, and in its essence is very similar to sustainable tourism, but in its own way implies action. And at least kind of that the tourism and events industry and all its constituents, whether it's public sector agencies, visitors, destinations, that everybody has a role to play. Everybody has a responsibility to take action, and it's not like something that responsible actions lead to that sustainable tourism future, that outcome. And also importantly, it's not just about doing less harm. It's really looking at maximizing that positive impact, economically, of course, but also socially and environmentally. It's really about tourism being that force for good and supporting the regeneration, not only of the economy, but also of host communities and the environment, which it's quite neatly summed up in this idea that tourism is there to create better places for people to live, which inherently makes better places for people to visit. So really delivering that more responsible tourism and focusing on those positive environmental, social, and economic impacts has a wide range of benefits. It can provide all visitors with enriching quality experiences. It can really help businesses build their resilience and support their success, and as well as benefiting and enhancing our communities and in our environment, which, quite frankly, Scotland as a destination brand significantly relies on. And we've identified kind of 4 key priority areas that will need to be addressed to deliver that more responsible tourism destination. I'll go into kind of these areas into more detail and what that really means and how businesses can get involved. But just to give you an overview of those strategic pillars, for want of a less formal word. So one of them is clearly supporting Scotland's transition to a low carbon economy. This is a fancy way of saying trying to address climate change and supporting Scottish Government's very ambitious net zero by 2045 targets. Again, we'll go into more detail on each of these, but also ensuring that tourism and events in Scotland are inclusive. So this is about accessibility, but also about equality, diversity, and the broader inclusion piece, which really runs throughout It's about encouraging barrier-free travel. So that's the travel and transport piece, that all people can get around, and then people aren't excluded, and also barrier-free access to tourism products and services. We've also included quality jobs and fair work in this piece because that's increasingly important. So that is about, the equality, diversity piece in employment, but also offering quality jobs to really support that economic diversity. Then ensuring tourism contributes to thriving communities, and a lot of this in here is about supporting community health and well-being. We need our communities to give that warm welcome to our visitors, to be positive about tourism, and we want all our communities throughout Scotland to benefit from tourism. So it's also encouraging that shared prosperity through regional and seasonal spreads, so that we, what we can do to make sure that visitors visit all parts of Scotland and hopefully throughout the year, and also ensuring that local engagement in destination development. And last but not least, supporting the protection and considerate enjoyment of Scotland's natural and cultural heritage. So essentially, our natural cultural heritage is what people come for, as well as the warm welcome and the people. But so it's essentially, as any tourism destination, fundamental that we work to protect that, and we work in partnership with the different agencies to do that. But we also promote it and promote that considerate enjoyment. So we need to be a bit careful sometimes of the carrying capacity of certain sites. In some sites are so sensitive that having 20 people there might be too much, but other sites could take more. So being considerate of that to minimize negative impacts. So those are kind of the four key areas. And really, just as to make a note, as Visit Scotland, we've taken a look to see what is our role, and obviously internally through our own operations we can influence that, but we quite consciously have taken the stand that it is very much our role to support and influence and collaborate with industry, but also with our destination communities, as well as the visitor has a role to play. So there's a piece of inspiring, guiding, and informing them of what responsible tourism looks like and how they can help make those more responsible choices and give them that meaningful experience. So I want to go through each one of the pillars in a little bit more detail, just to give you a bit of background of some of the activity that's been ongoing, and specifically how businesses can get involved. And it will probably still be a little bit overwhelming at the end of it because there's a fair amount of information in here, but hopefully you'll also get a better idea of what does it mean, and at least some ideas of where you could start. And you probably won't be able to do or can do everything at once, but it might inspire you to take, to focus on a few different things. So let's start with climate change and the kind of supporting that transition to a low carbon economy. Just to give you a little bit of background, I mean, obviously, COP26 last year was a really key moment in the discussion around and the fight against climate change globally. And it was great to have it in Glasgow, to have it in Scotland, to really have global minds on climate change and the spotlight on Scotland. And that was really a time for us to be ambitious and to show how tourism wants to be and is part of the solution. So Visit Scotland was actually the first national tourism organisation to join Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency a year before COP, and it was really to underline our commitment and our ambition to work collaboratively with national and international partners. It was very much more of a starting point rather than saying we've done it all already. So we've learned a lot more and are continuously working on our climate action plan. And through that, it's also been kind of a privilege to work with some key international partners to develop on the drafting committee of the Glasgow Declaration and for on climate action and tourism, which was launched at COP. So Glasgow lent its name to a global UN declaration to really kind of draw together the global travel and tourism industry to make a commitment to take action on climate change on specific targets and to report on that over the next decade. So it's great that Scotland can show leadership in that space, and very much, again, it's an opportunity to collaborate. And it's not just for national tourist boards or major companies. So that is also one thing that any any business can sign up to really kind of show their commitment. And obviously the Scottish Government has the net zero target of net zero greenhouse gases by 2045. But in a way, more importantly, there's a 75% reduction interim target of 2030. So I guess what that really drives home is we don't have until 2045. This next decade is key to take action. So really, we can't wait around much longer, and we can't wait around for other people to do things. So we all need to take action in this space. So what does that mean? So we recognize that that transition to net zero economy is a journey, and that we really need to bring a wide range of participants along, and everybody will be at different starting points, have various resources, whether that's time, money, and knowledge to put to this. So and we all need to be on that journey together and make sure that we move in the right direction. So really, there's some key questions we probably should all ask ourselves when embarking on a major journey. It's that where are we now? Where are we starting from, really? And the same on this climate action journey, so to speak, is that measuring and monitoring. So figuring out where as a business you are at. What are you spending your money on energy-wise? Where are your carbon emissions coming from? What are the big ticket items in that space? So establishing that baseline. And that can be walking around your business with a checklist to do a quick review, reading meters, dare I say, plugging them into an Excel file. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, and this is probably not the sexiest element of fighting climate change, but dare I say, a really fundamental one, because what it will allow you to do once you understand where your emissions are and what really the big ticket items are, is to prioritize action, to say, okay, well, I could do this, that sounds great, but I'm really going to make the biggest difference by doing and why. And then you can measure progress. And the way are we going, I guess, is setting that target and through the Scottish Government targets with net zero by 2045. I guess it's an easy target to adopt. I know many companies, once they have a better idea of where they're at, they're also in a better place to say, well, actually, could we get there faster, to set more ambitious targets. But this is also about looking at best practice and innovation. So where are we going? What does that responsible tourism future look like, and can we already see examples in that area? How are we going to get there? So there's some really key aspects that we need to address, and to address climate change, and I'll go into a bit more detail that. And I think it's also important to acknowledge for each one of ourselves, but also as a group, it's like, what is stopping us? Like, what are the barriers? Is it a lack of awareness or commitment from management or from anybody? I think increasingly that's probably the smallest barrier. I think there's quite a fair amount of awareness and at least acknowledgement out there that action needs to be taken. But then having the capability or the skills, having the time and having the money to address some of these issues might still be barriers, and being open about them allows everybody to kind of address them more easily. So really we've been looking at what kind of support package can we put in place for industry, and how can we help clearly communicating around some of these issues and aspects to kind of make that journey easy to understand and engage a wide range of people and foster that collaboration. So just to give you an idea, tackling climate change also sounds incredibly big, and kind of where to start and what does that cover. So these are some of the key areas probably most relevant to tourism businesses. So how we heat our buildings and the transport emissions make up over 50% of Scotland's territorial carbon emissions. So these are clearly focus areas across the board, and especially in tourism, it's undeniable that transport is one of the main sources of carbon emissions. So everybody can look at, if you have a building as part of your business, how to save energy, and also how to switch to potentially renewable or low carbon options to heat your building. That both of those, especially the saving energy, can also have a benefit of going straight to your bottom line without having getting any new business through the door to save that money. Transport is a little bit trickier. I mean, it's about providing information on walking and cycling and public transport to your customers. Appreciate in some rural areas, public transport offers slightly more challenging. But again, providing ideas of, giving the car a day off, and then what could they do if they have to come by car? What can they do in your area through walking, cycling, and also there will be increasingly over the next few years that shift to alternative vehicles, particularly EVs in the private vehicle sector. So I think increasingly businesses are recognizing that as a market, EV drivers. So is there an opportunity to install an EV charge point, or at the very least promote those that are near you? Food and drink is another key area. So if you do provide and serve food and drink, reducing your food waste can have a massive impact on reducing your your carbon emissions, or your greenhouse gas emissions. But also things like promoting increased options of plant-based diets and sourcing locally and seasonally. And that has a real great benefit, because that's a great offer for your customers as well, because they like to try Scottish food and drink. So that the local and seasonal options has multiple benefits, and even plant-based options. It's not about going all vegan and vegetarian, but there's an increasing number of customers that are looking for those options, even if they're, I believe flexitarian is the term. So it's really also meeting customer demand, never mind the climate benefits of that. And some of the other aspects here around land use and adaptation might not be an option for businesses without big tracts of land, but is there an opportunity to support either on your, wildlife gardening, or support tree planting or rewilding and peatland conservation? And adaptation is really about, unfortunately, we can't avoid climate. Even if we stopped all our emissions tomorrow, climate change is upon us, as we've probably seen over the last few years. So much of it is probably about trying to make the impacts less bad. So this is about taking that kind of look down the line of, there will be increasing extreme weather events in Scotland. That's likely to be storms, flooding, potentially even drought, believe it or not. So how might your business be affected by that? How can you mitigate those risks? But there may also be opportunities to take. So just with regards to advice and support, there's the Destination Net Zero is one of the key recovery programs that the Scottish Government had put in place last March. So a number of elements to that, an element of research and insights, so really establishing as Scotland what the baseline emissions are, but also where industry is at. And as I mentioned before, providing more awareness and engagement tools. So we're building that one-stop shop, that online resource on VisitScotlandorg, and increasingly building that program of support and best practice case studies. There's also projects to support places. So we're just about to go out to destinations on our Destination Climate Action Leaders program. So involve destinations and climate action planning. And there's also community EV charge point projects. And for businesses specifically, we'd be looking to promote EV charge points, top-up funding for that, and sustainable certification. So that is certification programs like Green Tourism, Green Key, which is a really great entry point for businesses to look at their responsible tourism practices in the round, as well as provide an opportunity to promote them in a credible kind of way. So again, on our website, there's a full summary of the funding available in that space, but really just to let you know that we're aware of the issues and we're here to help. So whether it's with this, and there's a wide range of partners that are out there as well to support businesses. And one of the key partners, as I mentioned here, and these are happy to share these slides, and these links that are on here might be useful, but specifically in this place, again, getting that advice at the moment, the Energy Efficiency Business Support Service, which at the beginning of next financial year will transition to a different name and a different agency, but in its essence, it's still there to provide businesses with that support and that one-to-one, what does the energy efficiency look like in your business? So if you do contact them and make a note of your interest, then they'll be in touch with you. And provide guests with information on what you're doing and how they can help. I know a lot of self-caterers often are like, well, I'm not there, I can't control what they're doing. They turn on all the lights, turn up the heating, open the window, and then they bugger off for the day. Which sometimes you can't really do that much about it, apart from provide them with information, potentially the way you have thermostatic timers or some kind of technological controls. But the more you share about what your ambitions and your journey is and kind of get their buy-in, then and more consumers are aware of this, then hopefully you get their support. Again, promoting low carbon transport, walking and cycling and active travel. That EV charge point piece, there is funding available to install one, and there's top-up funding which will be made available as well soon. And then reducing food waste, Zero Waste Scotland provides some really good information in that space. If you have staff or just on your own, I would also recommend undertaking climate emergency training to kind of build your awareness and that understanding, so that can really help, especially if you have lots of people, to get everybody on the same page and get the scope of the issues. Great, so that was climate change. Moving on to inclusion. So really around inclusion, the piece is, it's important to kind of think about this. So often it's seen as accessibility. Excuse me. Often it's seen as accessibility, and which it is. It includes that very much so, and looking at giving access to people that have access needs. But this isn't just about, dare I say, people in a wheelchair. That's probably a smaller amount of an impairment percentage of people who have an impairment. This can also be about people who are blind, who are hard of hearing, who have dementia, and a lot of these, or elderly people. So a lot of the tools you can put in place also benefit families with children and their prams, or elderly people. So it's not as niche a market as one might think. And it's also not just about making, we need to put a ramp everywhere or a handlebar. I mean, our research has shown that yes, there are certain kind of changes you can make, and you should consider making, but a lot of it is about, for a lot of people, having the right information about your business in advance. So knowing what to expect, just knowing, are there steps, how high are they, what can I expect, and then people can work with that and adjust. And also having the right kind of welcome, so that staff training on customer service of people with any access needs is really key, just because they want to feel welcome and the same way that everybody else does. And there's probably some top tips on how to support and help a blind person or somebody who's hearing impaired, and quite easy things that can be done. And here's just worth noting, there's a real business benefit. So apart from supporting that inclusion piece, it is a fairly big market in the UK and internationally, and they have a fair amount to spend. And most people travel with carers, so not alone. So there are multiple customers that would visit your business, and they're incredibly loyal. Once they find a business that does cater to their needs and is attentive to that, then they will return, and they're incredibly likely to make recommendations as well. So there is a real business benefit to looking at targeting, and that's a quite a broad customer base. So some of the inclusive tourism highlights that we're doing, so we're increasingly looking at pulling together kind of regional accessible itineraries. So not just promoting individual businesses, but promoting kind of 3, 4, 5 day itineraries to the accessible market. We have a range of support available as well. So you're welcome in Scotland, pathways to inclusive destinations. This is for the destination focus, like what they can do. But we also have an introduction to inclusion on our website, and so some basic information there. And we're working with Purple Tuesday, which can provide free access to their customer service training, and they have videos. So there are a wide range of things you can access, and also look to do an accessibility guide. Specifically at the moment, as part of our recovery project, we have Scots Spirit Holiday Voucher Scheme. So that's really looking for businesses who can be part of that and are happy to receive vouchers. So this is aimed at families and carers to really provide them with a break. And we're working with Family Holiday Association and Share Care Scotland on this. So we're really looking for any hotels, guest houses, bed and breakfasts, so accommodation providers, but also visitor attractions who are happy to get involved. They would get the money for the stay, so they get the voucher. So it's not kind of a freebie that you need to give away, but you would definitely be supporting a very worthy cause and worthy people. Again, on our website, which I'll mention later, there's more information. So some of the key actions you can take is produce an accessibility guide. Again, speaking about the providing information. So this is just about pulling together all the right kind of information about your business. So somebody with access needs has that information available and can then make the appropriate decision or choices. For example, you know, the wheelchair user has multiple wheelchairs available, and it's like, well, if I know what the layout is, I can choose to take this one or that one and make my life much easier. So just providing the right kind of information at the right time can already make a big difference. And then being confident in providing that good quality service, the customer service tutorials, reviewing our good practice guides. And some of you might have heard about Ewan's guide. So it's almost like an online tool that really reviews and showcases businesses that are catering to that accessible or are making themselves more accessible and inclusive. And that's you can be promoted on that. Great. Swiftly moving on to communities and natural cultural heritage. And obviously these are two very, very big topics, but in interest of time, I've kind of combined them a little bit. One of the big pieces of work Visit Scotland has done with partners across Scotland over the last couple of years is what we call our visitor management work. I think in the first summer after the COVID lockdown and also last year, but fortunately a little bit less so, it was clear that there was a massive increase in domestic visitors, particularly to like rural and coastal areas, which put a lot of pressure on communities, on the facilities and on the environment. So you might well have had some of that in Murray's Bayside or seen the pictures on the news with litter and no parking and you know, understandably that communities weren't particularly welcome to tourism in that space. So Visit Scotland was working with various national parks and the police and lots of different Zero Waste Scotland, lots of different partners to kind of get that messaging right and communicate with visitors to encourage them to act responsibly, and hence that Respect, Protect, Enjoy and our Responsible Tourism Visitor campaign. A lot of these, the as we call collateral, i.e. images or various things, and the visitor kind of guide are available for businesses to use. So on our DML, which is our digital media library, a collection of images and videos. Anybody can have access to that. So some of that, some of those messages, and you can find them, especially if you think, well, that's something that would be really useful to bring that message, make that a bit clearer to my visitors, you know, how they can. And it's not about how they need to behave, but really inspire them and raise their awareness of what they can do. So I think with thriving communities, again, it's about making sure that tourism is a force for good. So as a business, really seeing yourself as a member of the community and working with other tourism businesses there. How can you maximize that? How do you have space that the community can use? How can the community benefit as well? And obviously, you know, you're attracting customers to your business, and they potentially, hopefully, spend money in the community, especially if you provide them with that information on what there is to see and do. But it's really also spreading that message about enjoying it responsibly. Another thing that can be really helpful is extending the season. So if normally somebody operated just in the summer months, even by looking at the shoulder months or staying open in winter, and that's again the destination approach. If one individual business does that, that might be hard to maintain for one B&B if everything else is closed. But the more businesses come together to do that, you're benefiting the community and hopefully your own business, obviously, throughout the year. So it's not so seasonal. So that's the jobs, the income, everything that's promoted throughout the year. And again, the use and promotion of local businesses is key here for that benefit to remain within the communities. Natural and cultural heritage. So sorry, I just realized this slide is probably slightly behind as it's still talking about the year of coasts and waters, but we are now firmly in the year of Scotland stories, or Scotland's year of stories, which is also very much about our cultural heritage and our natural heritage. So it's really about promoting the stories we have to tell, and a great opportunity to really tell those traditional stories, modern stories, new angles, and showcase a lot of different things Scotland has to offer. But promote, as a business, you can definitely promote that natural and cultural heritage that guests can enjoy near you. And an important thing is make sure that you do that pre-trip and on your website. That your website isn't just about your business, but if as an accommodation provider, for example, if a visitor comes to your website and is like, well, do I want to stay here? I was thinking one night. And then they're like, oh, look, there's loads of stuff going on in the area. Oh, that looks really interesting. And that, and you know what? Why don't we stay 2 or 3 nights and then we can visit all these things in that area? So really, again, seeing yourself as part of the destination and helping promote what the destination has to offer can be incredibly helpful for the visitor and potentially encourage longer stays, which I'm sure every accommodation provider likes, and really supports the destination as a whole. Also, people want to get off the beaten track or feel like they get that hidden gem, that they're not going somewhere that everybody knows. So share your hidden gems. Obviously, it can help disperse footfall. So instead of sending everybody to the same place, people might be going to different places. I'm assuming there's a certain consciousness that if something is a particularly sensitive site, to send lots of people there might not be a great idea. But I think people will really enjoy if you say, well, this is the little walk that I go on and I really like this place and that site. So and that's a way of sharing what's on offer in your area and giving your customers the feel that they're kind of getting the special inside scoop. Promoting the outdoor access code, and that's in line with visitor management, so that people kind of know what to do and not to do, especially some visitors that aren't Scottish may not be aware around, you know, the right to roam, but still the responsibility they have, and that comes with that. Really, as we mentioned before, promoting that local food and drink, crafts, music, dance, even Gaelic, the language, anything your region in Scotland has to offer that makes it special and different from other destinations. You know, working with local artists, having that up in your business, even or arranging a workshop, kind of all of that can help support our natural cultural heritage, but also make it a unique, memorable experience for your customer. Which will be great. You know, be talking to their friends about and returning. And then if you do have grounds, so, and it doesn't have to be big tracts of land that you can build plant trees on, but even supporting wildlife in your grounds through wildlife gardening. If you can plant trees, great, or if you can support tree planting projects or rewilding projects. For example, Trees for Life is a big one, but increasingly there are projects around or projects that you will know of in your area much better than I do. So really that covers in a very fast whistle stop kind of way the 4 pillars of responsible tourism, and hopefully gives you a little bit more insight what it means. There isn't one size fits all. Not everybody will be able to do everything in the same kind of manner or maybe interested in doing that. Hopefully it's given you a little bit of inspiration on what it means and what you could do. And obviously there's more information on our website and lots of partners that are also there to support you. Another point I really wanted to make is that key to making progress on responsible tourism is that we do it together, and it needs to be done at pace and at scale. But for that to happen, it's core that we need to communicate with each other and we need to collaborate. So we always encourage all our businesses to share their responsible, sustainable, green, whatever you want to call your story. And in light of Scotland, Year of Scotland Stories, to share your story with your customers. And you don't have to have done it all, or, you know, kind of feel like, okay, I've ticked that box, I've got the star, but just sharing that you've made that commitment, you're aware of the need to do this, and, you know, what you're doing, and the progress you're making, and sharing that story. Because increasingly customers, they're definitely aware of this and they kind of want to travel more sustainably, but increasingly also just kind of want to know that the businesses they're staying with are taking care of this for them. So, you know, they have the value that they want to tackle climate change. So by telling that, or, you know, be more inclusive or be more responsible, and by showing them that you are doing your bit and progressing that, and I'm so sorry, I have a 2-year-old intruder, and just bear with me 1 second. Clearly knows how to bust the lock. So sorry, I'm glad this video can be edited. um, Again, where was I? I think it's about sharing the stories, and again, that increased customer demand and awareness of responsible tourism makes it ever more important to share your story and what you are doing and what you're working towards. Again, you don't have to, you know, make it sound much bigger than it is, because that's a reputational risk, but it's clearly good to talk about it. And also it's important to share with your fellow businesses in your destination, because it's really a way to learn from each other. And don't just share the highlights and what's worked, because that's great, but also share what hasn't worked or what you're really struggling with, because that's when the learning begins and we can all support each other. And you know, other people might have found a solution or think, oh, I have the same issue, but if we get together, then maybe that's something we can work out together. So again, as cheesy as it sounds, we're all in this together and we can only benefit from really working together on this and talking about it to our customers, to our fellow businesses, our suppliers, and everybody. So really sharing in that journey to become more responsible. And one way of promoting that your responsible commitment, and tell that story. So clearly from a COVID perspective, I'm sure you're all aware of the We're Good to Go mark, and how that translates to the international safe travels piece. Providing clear, engaging information for customers. Use the different channels you may have, social media, and you know, share your stories wherever and however you can. Also, opportunity to use certification. So many of you may be aware of Green Tourism, which is a green certification program we've had in Scotland for a long time, and they have over 850 members in Scotland. And not to be flippant, it provides you with a badge, but it actually provides you with more than that. It gives you a really good framework of like key actions that you need to do, provides you with an idea of where you're at, what you can do. You can work your way through from a bronze, silver, gold, and it does provide you with that credible badge that you can promote yourself to customers with. Also, Green Key is a certification program that's recently become, it's internationally quite well known, but only recently it's kind of become more well known in Scotland, and it has had some of its first members. So really that promotion aspect can work in lots of different ways. But as I said before, we are here to help, as are a whole bunch of other partners. Maybe a first stop could be our website on VisitScotlandorg. where we have a responsible tourism section and information on all the different pillars I was talking about. Specifically in your area, Cassie McKinnon is your industry relationship manager. Hopefully some of you have been in touch with her, and she can provide advice and support on a wide range of aspects, whether that's responsible tourism or digital and various things. So you can contact her directly again, and find her contact details on our website as well. So and she can also help signpost you to some of our partners. And that's key. I mean, I've been talking long enough from a Visit Scotland perspective, but by no means are we on our own. Is definitely working in partnership, whether that's the enterprise agencies, other Scottish tourism organisations across the board, across the different agencies and internationally. So there's a lot of advice and support out there, and kind of people pulling in the same direction. So you're not alone. But yes, sorry, that is me. Thank you very much. That was definitely for listening, and a whistle-stop tour of everything. Hopefully I've not completely bamboozled you or put everybody to sleep. I'm going to stop presenting, and would be great to get thoughts, questions, feedback.
Janie, that was brilliant. Thank you. Really enjoyed that. I had a couple of questions that were open to the guys. So if we had, so as a destination, my colleague Rachel has been leading some of our work around responsible, sustainable, and I think we are gearing up to be signing the Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency in the next couple of weeks. Rachel, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We're just going to make the final touches on it, and then we're good to go.
So what that means is that we're going to spearhead that and then work with everybody we possibly can to trickle it down to the lowest possible, widest possible level. So keep your eyes on that. I guess a question: if I have to do one thing that benefits my business directly, what would you say I should do? So that first step that takes me on the journey.
One thing with regards to the climate change piece, or just the whole piece?
Well, probably one of each. Maybe one climate change, one responsible. Now Janie's very lucky. She's just got a toddler. I usually have a cat that jumps up, so you know, that's how it goes these days. International digital cats.
Okay, sorry. Yes, so I guess, as I mentioned before, it probably in that climate change context, but in a strange way applies across the piece. So kind of understanding where your business is at. And it's always easy to rush into wanting to take action. So establishing where your business is at. It's really about, before you rush into taking action and say, oh, that sounds great, let me change my light bulbs or move to, away from plastic straws. And those are all great actions, but that might not make the biggest difference to your business. So kind of taking a step back, seeing, well, what's actually happening in my business? Where am I in the climate change piece? Where am I using energy? Where am I spending most of my money on? So to really understand that element, and being then able to prioritize and say, or you might be surprised and say, okay, if I start with that will make the biggest difference. Sometimes the big ticket items you can't make a quick difference on, like yes, I should install a new boiler, but that costs a lot of money and I can apply for funding, but that's not done overnight. But at least that's your priority item, and you can address those in the order. Similarly, I guess with the other aspects, whether it's with inclusion, I would say do an access statement, an accessibility guide. So that's bringing together all the information about your business in a format that you can promote to customers. And that's a great starting point for having that information available on the inclusive piece. Yeah, for the natural and cultural heritage, I guess that very much depends on what type of business you are. If it's about, how can you promote what you have in your areas, about sourcing local, if you do provide food and drink, for example, and make sure that if we've come across a lot of businesses as part of looking at our Taste Our Best accreditation that are sourcing local food and drink, but aren't really telling the story. They're like, oh, should I put it on my menu? Should I let visitors know about it? So some of you might be doing really well in that area, but not really sharing that. So again, have a look at what you're already getting locally. Can you make more of that, or are there alternatives if you want to increase that? And sharing kind of that information on wildlife and culture in your area on your website. So to creating that destination image and influencing that visitor choice before they even come to you.
So I think we first met, Janie, when you were looking after Taste Our Best all those years ago.
Yes.
And it is the common story is people are doing it but don't tell anybody about it. So the most common question I get in my inbox, which isn't why do I have to pay for this, it is how can I get money to install or do A, B, or C? So it's quite a complicated landscape. If you want to install a charging point, it's never as simple as it looks. But I would say make us or your Visit Scotland rep your first point of contact, because we've done a lot of this now, and we're fairly skilled at finding the right gateway for you to go through to get potentially the right answer. What Janie says is correct, though, that it does tend to take a while. The Zero Waste Scotland guys are super helpful. And there's a pipeline, a kind of pathway for them. But give us a shout. We've got bits and bobs on our website, nothing like as much as VS have. But Rachel or I or Claire there can take you on that kind of first steps in the how can I get money for an EV charging point journey. And I think it's worth saying that these funds have been opening more regularly recently, and I think it's not going to abate. There will be a continuing desire and requirement for us to meet that net zero challenge. So come and speak to us. We'll see what we can do. Bear in mind also that locally, working together as communities, you can also access, as Janie pointed out, community support for various environmental sustainable projects, EV charging. And our colleagues over in the park, bottom of my screen is Pete from the National Park. Those guys over there have done some really special stuff working across communities to deliver, I guess I would say, strategic difference and strategic transformation. So my key message would be work together if you possibly can. We like to communicate and encourage working together. So we'll take out more work in the next few months. I see a chat question from lovely Wendy. Wendy, fire away. We'll even unmute you.
Yeah. So I've had an EV for a couple of years now, and I'm quite passionate about them. I think every single coffee shop, supermarket, anything that people go to for 1 hour or so should have a charge point. But people keep putting in 7 kilowatt charge points, and they are absolutely useless. I have got a really small short range car. I've got a Renault Zoe. It takes me 9 hours to charge my car to do about 60, 70 miles on a 7 kilowatt charging point. So if I go into a supermarket like Tesco, they're putting 7 kilowatt things in for an hour. I might have gained myself 7 or 8 miles worth of, so if anyone's thinking about putting a charge point in, could they put fast ones in, please?
Yeah.
Great. That's a really useful point to make, and I think at least the type of charge point needs to be appropriate to the type of site you are. So if you're an accommodation provider where potentially customers will charge overnight, then yes, hopefully even a 22 kilowatt one would be nice. If you have the time. But I would agree that anywhere like a visitor attraction or cafe, or where it's a matter of a couple hours, at least look at the 22 kilowatt one. I mean, the reality is that the difference in cost between a 7 or 22 kilowatt one, and then when you get to the fast or super fast charging, is massive. So you know, we're talking about maybe a few £1,000s to tens of thousands of pounds. So but there is support available at least for the 7 and 22 kilowatt EV charge points, and there's existing support from the Energy Saving Trust. And as I said, we're looking to launch additional top-up support around that, and we will definitely share that through Laurie and the team with yourselves as well once that's there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's put a wee quick link in the box there. More stuff will follow, and one presumes, you know, if electric cars are being sold at the rate they are, then you know, it can only get better. Any more for any more, and if not, we will bid Janie a very fond and grateful thank you, so you can go back and deal with your intruder.
Yes, apologies for that. He's still not used to like me having to be back at work again. But yes, and I hope that was useful, and I will take the semi-stunned silence as a still as a good point. But again, as Laurie said, please, if sometimes these, hopefully this kind of sparks any thoughts, then questions, then do get in touch either with Rachel and Laurie and the team, or with Cassie, and then we can support you and help answer some more questions or inspire you to take action.
Very much so. It's a complicated landscape, but we don't all have to rush down it at once. Thank you so much, Janie. We're hugely grateful. Thank you to everyone who's taken the time out of their day to attend.